Occur to you even when you're reading something that you've read before, because when it said gnashing of teeth, and I was like, what does that sound like? Gnashing of teeth. I'm not sure I've ever actually encountered that. And obviously I don't want to. So years ago, I was serving in a church in Washington, D.C., and our diocese decided to take the youth on a retreat to a conference center in Maryland. Now, this conference center was way, way out in the country, down a winding dirt road, lots of fences with cows behind them. And when it got dark, a mist started to cover the ground. Fireflies, remember fireflies? I don't know if we still have those anymore. Lightning bugs glittered around, the crickets started chirping, the frogs were croaking, and the cows started to move. And the teens were scared. When they heard the moo of the cows, they were terrified because most of them were from the city where, true, there were lights and sounds, but they were street lights and sirens, and they were used to those. But to be in deep darkness with strange sights and sounds wafting across the open fields made them think something was after them. So you do have to imagine, if you'd never heard any of those sounds before and it's total darkness, what would you think that was? Well, I kind of pictured Jacob in our story today like those teens. Although Jacob has made a hasty exit from his home and everything that is familiar, camping out in the middle of nowhere, afraid of what might catch up with him and afraid of what might lie ahead of him. He's on the run because his father Isaac, who was old and becoming frail, wanted to pass on his blessing to his eldest son Esau. And that was the custom of those times. But Jacob, and Jacob's mother actually, tricked him into giving the blessing to Jacob instead of Esau. And Esau was so angry when he learned about this that he threatened to kill Jacob, his brother. So Jacob ran away. And that is why in our scripture today we hear that it is night, and Jacob, who has been on the run, is now alone, frightened, anxious, and worn out. His body finally gives out on him and he falls into the kind of sleep where defenses are down and the mind is open to strange dreams like ladders going up into the sky and angels climbing up and down the ladders. But he also pictures God, not a person, but a voice speaking to him saying, I am God, the God of Abraham and Isaac. Know that I am with you. I will keep you wherever you go. I will not leave you. What a powerful promise that is from God. I am with you. I will not leave you. And Jacob says, God was in this place and I didn't even know it. And in that encounter, he learned then and there that indeed God was with him. And he went on his way not to return for 20 years. Think about it. That family was a very complicated family if you've read part of that other scripture. Brothers betrayed each other. A mother manipulated that betrayal. A father really couldn't tell the difference between his sons. They were born minutes apart. A son ran for his life from the wrath of his brother, and there is more yet to come as they stay tuned, news at 11. But even when the news is not good news in this family story, we will see that indeed God is always with them. And this is the promise that is repeated to us, to humankind, time and time again throughout the Bible. And quite like Jacob, we often do not realize that in moments when we think we are alone, actually, God is with us. Whether we feel a spirit of support and companionship, or someone has showed up or called right when we needed it. God is with us, each and every one of us, always and forever. In today's gospel, Jesus tells his followers a parable about weeds and wheat growing together in one field. And it becomes obvious that Jesus is dealing with people who believe that there are two kinds of people in the world: the wheat and the weeds, the good and the bad, the righteous and the evil. And someone in the story says, well, shouldn't those weeds be pulled out right at the beginning? It reminds me of an old movie. I don't know if you ever saw this. It's 2002, called Minority Report. I think Tom Cruise was in it. He played a detective living in 2054, a time where future actions of individuals could be predicted. If the report said that Sam Jones was going to kill somebody 10 years down the line, then the detectives, the pre-crime unit, went after Sam Jones, who's totally unaware that he might commit this act, and he was taken out of commission. Determining weeds, wheat. If you're a weed, you're going to do something bad. There's no help for you. That's what that says. Today we might even find that notion appealing because we are living in a time where terrible crimes of violence or horrible actions of injustice have been repeated over and over in our country. However, even with all the profiles that are created about who might do what and when, the truth is this: we cannot actually predict what someone will do or not do until that moment arrives. Because every person on this earth has choices to make. Every person on this earth always has a choice to make. We deny the realities of our lives if we do not acknowledge that every human being has within them the capacity to do good or to do evil. That each of our own lives resembles a farmer's field infected with weeds and wheat, which become entangled within our hearts, souls, and minds. And that we, all of us, have at some time or other hurt another person through words or actions, or maybe even by our silence. Real life is no dress rehearsal. All of us are on a life journey together, and we all start out together as potential wheat or potential weeds. Jesus told his listeners that the weeds shouldn't be pulled out early on because some of the wheat might be pulled out also. Someone once told me that often when a garden has poisonous plants, a plant for healing will grow right next to it. In life, we all have decisions to make in our quest to achieve our full potential and our striving to be whole, W-H-O-L-E. All of us at some time or other will make a bad decision. All of us at some time or other will make mistakes, hurt another person, take the wrong path, get confused, or question our purpose. All of us at some time or other will make a good decision, right or wrong, reach out to another person, take the right path, get clarity, or discern our purpose. This is part of life's journey. Part of healthy growing is being able to look at our lives where we erred or strayed, and why. And if we hurt anyone other than ourselves, and to ask, what did I learn about myself? And then determine not to do that again. To be that person, but a new and different person. I have to say, I spent a week up at Holy Cross Monastery in West Park, New York, and you always have a lot of time silenced by yourself. And I actually wrote down a whole page about who I am, the person I am, or is still growing to be, is a result of everything I have ever done wrong and everything I have ever done right, and what I have learned from it. So I would encourage you during the week just to sit in silence for a while and then take out a sheet of paper and write down things that you wish you had not done, followed with the question, why? Why did I do that? Who was I at that moment? What have I learned from that experience? I often think a lot of times in life we want to, have a board where we could just erase every mistake we've ever made and everything we've done wrong. But even when you do something wrong, you learn from it. Absolutely. You learn something new about yourself or the situation. And you grow from that learning. It is true that some people take a wrong turn for whatever reason, maybe because they were treated poorly. And usually in an abuser's life there has been abuse. Maybe because they have some mental instabilities. Maybe because they've been raised or brainwashed into wrong thinking. There are people in this country that once in a while I look at them and think, what happened to you when you were younger that has affected your thinking? Although I will say, I've told a couple of you this already today, that you have to find humor where you can. And the person in charge of our health, RFK Jr., apparently said to a couple, if your parents were sterile, you will be too. Now, think about that. The person in charge of our health care says, if your parents did not have any children, you won't either. So, I don't know why some people behave the way they do, calling people names, shouting out lies, degrading those of different color or culture or gender identity or varying abilities. I try to imagine once in a while that something must have happened to these folk in their young lives that shaped their character in a way that is void of ethical and moral behavior. But I wonder why they could not get beyond it and to try and live a life of wholeness. Fortunately for humankind, in the end, although it might take a long time, the good in humanity does far outweigh the bad. What is important, at least from a religious view, is that God has promised to be with us in this journey, to never leave us, to see us through whatever happens to us, not fixing everything that doesn't go well, not to heal illnesses that can't be healed, not to give us all the land and riches that we think we want, but to be with us, in us, giving us the strength, courage, hope, joy, and goodness we need to stay in this journey called life. When I think about how people could have been mistreated terribly and learned to live beyond it, I think of the faith and the courageous life of John Lewis, who served in the House of Representatives for 33 years. He died in 2020. And it just seems so bizarre when I think about life, especially for people who are much younger and would not have been paying attention to the news at that time, to realize that a person like John Lewis, when a young man, could not sit at a lunch counter and eat a sandwich. Way back then, there were no McDonald's, no Steak and Shake, and no Burger King drive-thrus. There were lunch counters at the Five and Dime store or at local restaurants. But people of color were not allowed in. So just to sit down brought words of hate or worse, beatings. No matter what happened to John Lewis, the many arrests, the many beatings, his suffering and the suffering of his people, he never lost faith that in all of it, God was with him, giving him the courage and determination to keep going, to be the best person he could possibly be. And he certainly succeeded in being that person and set a role model, not just for himself, but for other young people coming along. The stories from the Bible that we've been hearing were all written down by other humans, and they contain all the wheat and the weeds and all the flowers and the thistles. We read them over and over again because they actually provide for us a safe way of looking back at our own lives, how we're doing, and hopefully enable us to see where God has been acting in our lives, whether our choices have been good or not. So I found this kind of an ironic thing to think about. When I was growing up in Florida, there was a huge field next to us, and the field was filled with phlox and Queen Anne's lace. And what did we call them? Weeds. We called them weeds. And now you've got to go to Home Depot and pay like $7 for a plant for phlox, or over at Fresh Market, $2.50 for one stem of Queen Anne's lace. What was considered a weed is now a treasured flower. Most often it is in these times when we feel anxious about our future, worried about what we've done or left undone, that we are most vulnerable and more open to sensing God's presence, feeling connected to God, able to hear God who says to us still, I am with you always, I will never leave you. I don't know if I've shared this with you before, but I had been working at a church in Michigan, and I took another job down in Fort Lauderdale. I just thought it would be a good thing to do. And I was going to be the program director, I think is what the title was. Half the people didn't even know about that job when I got there. The first Sunday I was there, the rector told me to stand with him behind the altar and administer the chalice. And it was the most overpowering feeling to look out at a total room full of strangers. And I thought, I don't know who you are. I have no idea who you are. But I should be the one offering you the bread and the wine. And the next day I contacted the bishop in Michigan, where I came from, and asked, what do you think? And he said, yes, I will support you and be your bishop. You go get ordained. But in that moment, I felt God gave me a direction that I needed to follow. What happens in your lifetime sometimes when you are trying to make a decision? Are you open and listening to perhaps a God who says to you, do this because you will enhance your life and the lives of others? I want you to be whole and healthy. I am with you, and I will walk with you on that journey. I think our biggest problem probably is that we don't pay attention to what is being said. There's that old joke about the woman who says to God, oh, please, God, help me to find a parking place in front of my business thing. And then a minute later says, oh, never mind, I found one myself. I think we do that quite often. Oh, God, help me. Oh, never mind, I've taken care of it myself. We need to pay attention to what's being said, who says it, or when something makes us stop and think about where we are in life. We don't want to be like Jacob, who said, God was in this place and I didn't even know it.